I'm just sitting there and all of a sudden I get a text from him and I'm like, what's this? And I look and it's a picture of a check and it says, my biggest check to date. And it was a check for $636,000 because he just refied a bunch of properties. And I was like, dude, I'm out. I am done. And I'm not kidding you. Something broke inside of me. And I was like, I am gone.
You're listening to the Real FI Podcast, where we discuss time-tested tricks, techniques, and strategies for pursuing financial independence today, so that we can enjoy a better tomorrow. A better tomorrow. Financial independence isn't about getting rich quick. It's about cultivating a foundation to grow financially, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Let's figure out how to kick the 9 to 5. Here are your hosts, Patrick and James.
All right, buddy. Ooh, let's try that again. Fuck. We'll leave that one in there. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Real FI Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick McGrath, with my co-host, James Rippion. How's it going today, James?
It's going well, man. Going well. Nothing to complain about today. It's a little rainy over here in Fayetteville where I'm at, but we're here to make some deals happen and talk with a great investor with Grant Warrington. So let's get into it.
That's right, everybody. I'm sure if you haven't heard yet, you will be soon. We've got Grant Warrington here with us today. He's on Instagram. He's on TikTok. He invests in apartments. His goal is to get himself out there, just so you recognize his face and the type of content that he's bringing in. Grant, how's it going today?
Great, man. Hey, first of all, thanks you guys for both having me on this show. I'm super excited. I've been looking forward to this. So really appreciate you guys having me on here.
Good. We know our listeners are looking forward to it as well. So Grant, why don't you get us started with telling us a little bit about your background and how you got started in your career and leading us up to you being in real estate investing.
Yeah. So my background, I'll let you know. I was in construction, right? I was a 23-year construction worker. I was actually a crane operator here in Michigan. My grandfather was a crane operator. My father, I was. In 2003, actually, I really ventured into buying our my first homes. I bought 3 houses in 2003. And, I bought Carlton sheets. If anybody remembers that, it was cassettes you could buy to learn how to buy houses. I had a lot of issues in my personal life. I didn't have enough information to do it. Long story short, every one of my tenants owed me like $5,000. I owned 3 houses. It was a disaster. It was a nightmare. I met a guy that was selling me these houses. And you know what? I had to declare bankruptcy. I gave them all back. They were in great condition. It was killing me literally. And I gave them back and I was out of the game. Right. And 2007, the bankruptcy was finalized. Finally, I could breathe again. But I always thought, you know what? I'm going to get back into it one day. I knew that. I mean, I loved it, but a couple of things. My mind wasn't right. And I didn't have the knowledge to do it. Right. I didn't put in the time to learn. So one of the things in 2011, I believe it was, I quit drinking, and that was with the help of God, man, that changed my life. That's where my life started to change. Let's put it that way. But not only did I do that, I also learned, I needed to grow, because if I'm an asshole and I quit drinking, I'm still an asshole. I just don't drink now. Right. So
exactly.
So my point was, I need to be a better human being. So I worked on that in little increments, the best I knew how at that time. Right. Fast forward, I met my wife in 2014. We bought our first rental. We both had this desire to own real estate. And I'm like, hey, I used to own some real estate. I won't tell you what happened, but no, I told her everything. And I said, let's do it again. And she's like, yeah. And we bought our first house together. That was 2015. Like we bought our first house, or 14, end of 14. And we had built up 11 units by the time I finally said, you know what, I'm ready to quit. I was a business agent at that time, which means I worked for my union. I had a great career. I had 2 pensions. I drove a company truck. things were great, right? I wasn't out in the field anymore working construction. I was kind of in the office, and I just finally, I had enough. And I'll be honest with you, if you got the time, I'll tell you what happened. My boss had asked me to do some things, my immediate boss, and I didn't feel right about it. And I just morally disagreed with it. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, go to this Starbucks. I was out in the field, meet me at this Starbucks, and we're going to talk about it. And I'm like, fuck, all right, well, I could lose my job. And I had a mentor at that time. Like I said, we had built up 11 units, luckily. And I'm sitting there in the Starbucks waiting for my boss to come in. And, I had this mentor, he's a friend of mine, but we didn't talk. Every 3 months or something. Every time I did something, I'd reach out to him. Hey, I bought a house. What should I do next? Or whatever. And I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden I get a text from him, and I'm like, what's this? And I look, and it's a picture of a check, and it says, my biggest check to date. And it was a check for $636,000 because he just refied a bunch of properties. And I was like, dude, I'm out. I am done. And I'm not kidding you. Something broke inside of me. And I was like, I am gone, dude. So I was like, that's it. Bring the boss on, whatever I got to do, whatever you guys want to do to me. No problem. I'll do it. Sounds great. Whatever. But I'm freaking gone, dude. I knew it mentally. I didn't know how though. 11 units. I didn't have enough money. Right. And, 2 months later, this is just about being intentional again. I'm like, I'm gone. We'll figure it out. 2 months later, I'm working for my boss, and I'm managing 800 units for him. He owned a property management company, and that was it. I was done. 2 months later, had a new career. I'd quit that W-2 and moved on to the next phase of my life in property management, which lasted 2 years. And then I quit that as well.
So at that point, when you had 11 units, did you own those outright, or did you have loans on those? Because I know you said you went through the bankruptcy proceeding, and I'm kind of curious how that ending in 2007 set you up for your future real estate dealing. So maybe you could walk us a little bit through that.
Yeah. So the great thing about my that earlier, I would say failure, but really it was a lesson, right? The great thing about that lesson was I learned how to deal with people. I learned how to deal with tenants. I learned that they're going to tell me things, and sometimes that's not the truth. I learned I'm not their number one priority, but I also learned I can still be nice to people, right? So I learned, like, this is the way it is. I can still be nice, but you're going to follow the rules, or you're just not going to live here. So I learned all those things. The problem that came from the bankruptcy though is I was like, I'm never getting debt again. Never. I paid cash for everything from that point forward. I'm like, I'm not putting myself in that situation again. And then the problem, arose. We bought our first house. My wife had $20,000. Monica, my girlfriend at the time, I had $20,000. We put our money together. We bought a house, and it needed everything, man. It needed a roof, a driveway, a furnace, and air conditioning, new electrical, new plumbing. And we were broke, and we were out of money. And that's what we've done really throughout our career. We've invested with no money. We're at 41 units personally owned now. It's 3 apartment buildings and a duplex. And we have debt on everything. We've refinanced everything to grow. That's just how we've done it. And we did this with very little money. And now we're moving into the next phase of syndicating apartments. And we just closed on a 98 unit with partners. So that's our next step. But yeah, like I said, we started out one single family and ran out of money.
Man, I really, really love that story. And that really resonates with me a lot. And I think that you would have been in a different position, morally and in life, had you not had those 11 units, whatever, if they weren't covering everything, right? But they were covering something, something big enough to where you could sit there and go, you know what? It's okay. Is it going to hurt?
Yeah.
Am I going to have to figure it out? But at least you had that,
Yeah. And what those did for me was it shifted, not a lot, but just a little bit. It shifted my mindset to where I was like, I can see the future a little clearer. You know what I mean? Like I have these 11 units. We built it before we needed it. Right. And then when I was ready to quit, then we needed it. But I was like, I can see my path is now going in this direction. And that's how I was able to quit that job, because thankfully we had those 11 and I knew like, wow, there's something more out there for me.
Man, that's so awesome. I think everybody out there listening just needs to know, like, sometimes when you're getting into real estate, you have the dream of being financially free, down the road at some point, but at some point that you're not expecting, life's going to happen. And just having started and having built up something, even though you're not at your goal yet, it gives you the ability to make some decisions in life that normally you wouldn't be able to. And, when you're on your financial independence journey or financial freedom journey, things change, life changes, your goals change, and what changed for you was your ability to quit and go do something else. So that's really awesome. I mean, right now, you told us your next goal is syndication. So, what does that look like? Like, what's the ultimate big picture that you're going for?
Basically, I mean, like right now, I want to have 10,000 units. I mean, I want big numbers. This is something we can do and we never have to quit, right? My wife and I, and I just want to let people know that my wife and I are 50-50 on all of this. Like, she is 100% in this. She handles most of our property management, like 99% of it. So, I mean, she's in there with me. So it's her and I. But our goal is really, we happen to be able to jump on with a team and take this property down. So, that worked out great. The team has 780 million in assets under management. So for us to be able to jump on with them was, phenomenal. So we're going to continue with them. We're going to continue doing our thing. And, in the future, we'll be doing our own deals at some point in time.
Perfect. So tell us a little bit more about your current portfolio. I know you said you've got 3 apartments and a duplex.
Yeah.
Walk us through how you kind of built up to getting from
Yeah.
that 11 units to acquiring your apartment complexes. Because I know that's a huge step that a lot of people are fearful of taking, and it almost seems insurmountable. So why don't you walk us through the process that you went through to make that leap and get into apartment buildings?
Yeah. So I think that's what people need to, understand is like, I have people call me all the time. I offer like a free 30-minute phone call. And I just had a guy call me the other day and he's like, I don't feel like I'm growing fast enough. And I'm like, bro, dude, I know the feeling, but everybody feels that way. But like, we started with no money, like I said. So we just cobbled some houses together. Like, my wife moved in with me, and she had her condo paid free and clear. So there's a house free and clear we turned that into a rental. We bought another house for 20 grand that needed a ton of work. And we had some people say, well, I'll lend you the 20 grand to buy it. So there was another one free and clear. And then our third property we bought, it was like 55,000. It was a 3-unit. And we took out credit cards. I think we took 10 grand on a credit card. Put it in our bank account. I took out a personal loan. My wife took out a personal loan. And all through this time, I've sold some retirement that I had. I sold my stocks. I sold my boat. I sold my pool table. I sold my truck. I mean, we're all in. We don't have any money. So we're doing everything we can to buy these. So anyway, we get these first 3. We do a blanket loan. We rehab them, right? Just like giant burrs. But we rehab them, put some tenants in. And then we do a blanket loan. So we package all 3 of them together into a commercial loan. And then we get a check for 75% loan to value on those properties. So I think our first check was like 80 grand, took that 80 grand. And we're like, dude, this is it. We're on easy street now. And then my mentor is like, okay, now you need to get people to buy the properties for you. And I'm like, oh shit. All right. So then we found 3 people to purchase the properties for us. The next 3 we bought, and we took that 80 grand and we used that for rehab money. 6 months later, we had all the houses we purchased rehabbed. We had tenants all in them, and we did it again, another blanket loan, and we got a check for like 125,000 at that point. And at that point, I was telling everybody, it's just like you hear, tell everybody you know what you want and what you're looking to do. I was telling everybody we're going to buy apartments because my wife did the math and she's like, Grant, do you realize we have debt on everything? So if we get $100 a door, let's say $10,000 a month we want to get, that's like 100 houses we'd have to own. And I'm like, I can't do 100 houses. Like I can't physically do that. I'm like exhausted. I didn't know anything about teams, about different things. And I'm just like, I just can't do that. And we're like, well, let's switch to apartments. So I was in that $20,000 property we bought. We had it rehabbed. The city inspector was in there. And I said, hey, we're looking to buy apartment buildings. And he goes, you know what? There's a woman in your city that owns a bunch of properties. Why don't you call her? So I called her and she said, call this person, and this person. Those three people do a very bad job running their buildings and they own properties. So I happen to know, I called all of them and I happen to know one of them and I stopped into his place of business and he's like, yeah, I think I'll sell it to you. And that was a 20 unit apartment. That was our first one. That was a whole nother disaster. But we hung in there. We couldn't agree on a price for a year. A year later, my wife and I said to each other, we're like, if not this, then what? What other property out there? And we went back to him and we struck up a term. We did seller financing and we ended up buying that thing from him. I mean, it's such a long story on that. It took 9 months to close. He actually lost it. He lost it for taxes. My wife caught it just in time and told him like, hey dude, you need to pay 50 grand or it's gone for good. 2 weeks, it's gone forever. And he didn't believe her at first. And then finally he did, he paid the money. So it was just, it was amazing.
I feel like we got to dig into this deal a little bit more. There seems like there's a whole bunch of hidden nuggets in here that we should just crack open. Well, first of all, title company didn't come up with that tax lien on the property. Like you said, your wife found it.
They did, correct. So they did, and it was an exception on title. But back then we didn't really know what it was. No one really explained it to us. That's the big deal with title too. Like if you don't have a good title company, they'll just send you the title work back with the exceptions on it. Nobody's going to explain it to you, right? You're just going to go, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, there's his name. But there were some exceptions on title. We didn't realize that. So my wife dug into it more and was like, oh shit, this is what that means. Called the title company, did the due diligence on it. So that's how they're like, yeah, that's exactly what that means, you know, but nobody reached out to us and because it was seller financing. We had no broker or realtor involved. At the time I was a realtor. I wasn't really practicing back then. And so that's what happened there. The other thing that was on there was in 2011, they paid off their loan or 2010, whatever it was, they paid off their loan. So it was free and clear. However, the bank that they had the loan through went out of business. So they couldn't prove that the loan was paid off. So now we had to go to court and his lawyer he hired drug his feet and this took forever. We had to go to court to prove that there was no lien on the property. So that's why it took 9 months to get through all of these issues. And finally we ended up closing like January 29th, 2019.
I love this story because there's so many layers to this onion to peel back. Because one, you guys decided that you wanted to go into bigger stuff, and you're like, I'm telling everybody, you've got a city inspector at one of your single families doing an inspection, and you decide to say, hey, I'm looking to buy apartment buildings. You know, do you know anyone I should talk to? Yeah, go talk to this lady. Boom. You actually called her, and then she gave you 3 people to call, and you reached out to all of them and were able to put a deal together, even though you had all these hiccups along the way. You were committed. Like we are taking the next step. We are going into apartment buildings. And you're just going to just keep batting away at everything to hit your goal. And now, hey, I bet you every title assessment you get back, you guys are looking through it with a fine-tooth comb. I bet you now you're looking at all the tax liens and everything before you put the offer in. Now you know how owner financing works and the different creative structures that you can do. And you knock that one all out on your first one. So it was just because you took action, you decided, you committed, and you took action. And people out there, I think, just need to realize that it's a lot of work. You just have to grind at this stuff sometimes and just not give up. You know, the fruit is there. You just have to climb for it, man. And like everything you just said, you know, at the time, I'm sure you guys felt overwhelmed and had all these different things going on. But looking back at it now, you're like, man, you could have paid someone to tell you how to do all that stuff, but it wouldn't have made the impact of going through it and taking that year, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, like I always tell people, I'm like, it's really not hard. Like digging a ditch, like outside in the winter is hard work, right? If you're a ditch digger, bro, that's hard work. So like what I did was inconvenient and growth, and I had to push myself because I didn't want to do it, right? I mean, because nobody really wants to go through all these things, but it's really not hard. So, and it's just really copying, you know, like if people listen to your podcast, they're going to find out how to do these different things. And that's all I did. Like that mentor I talked to you about, he told me, you know, a while back, he's like, you're the only person that did what I told them. I'm like, isn't that crazy? He's like, I gave you like 5 things to do. And you came back to me and were like, hey, I did those 5 things. What would you suggest next? And he's like, I was blown away. Like nobody ever does anything I tell them. And that's the same with me. I talk to people all the time and they just don't do what I say. And that's fine. But that was a side note. But I mean, I can go into some of the financials and the seller financing if you guys want with that deal.
I would love to hear that. I was going to ask you, you know, what did you pay for it?
Yep.
What were the seller finance terms? What were the rents at the time? And then what's the cash flow and how much is it worth now? Because that was 2019, right?
Correct. Yeah. January 2019. So we got into it right at the right time.
3 years ago. So give us the breakdown on this deal.
Yeah. So we bought it for $625,000. We put $125,000 down. So you got to understand, we're getting into this. I told you, I think we had a check for 125 grand, right? So you can see things are getting thin. This needed everything. Like it needed a roof. Every single unit needs to be turned. It's a 20 unit. It had multiple leaks. All the zone valves were bad. They had buckets, 50-gallon buckets under leaks in the basement, holding water, full of water. They just didn't fix anything. It was a disaster. So, you know, flooring all throughout the whole property, common area, everything needed to be replaced, all new windows, everything. So we get into this, we put $125,000 down. The nice thing was we got them to amortize it over 30 years, which helped bring our payment down. But we had a balloon payment in 28 months, I believe it was, because they were older gentlemen and they're like, we don't want to wait around forever for the money. So we said, that's fine. There was 5 vacancies when we got in. He told us 2 originally. He didn't have leases for a bunch of people. It was just a mess. Nobody paid him. This is a great tip too. Nobody paid him. He had a sign up by the mailboxes that said, if you do not pay me, the water will be shut off by the city. You need to pay rent. And nobody ever paid him. So that was a problem. But the month we took over, guess how many tenants paid us?
I want to say 10.
All of them. Every single one of them paid us. And they've all paid us continually. That we've never had a problem, right? So that's the difference in mentality, right? They knew like, oh shit, we can't screw around here anymore. And that's what happened. And we didn't go in there guns blazing and saying anything. We just went in there, started doing work and telling them, these are the important things. Take care of your unit, pay your rent on time. That's what we want to see. Because everybody had so many questions, you know, are you going to kick us out? Are you going to raise rent? Are you going to do this? We're not going to do anything right now, but here's what's important. Pay your rent on time and take care of the unit. And that's what we did. So we turned those units, we got tenants in. Average rents for $490 back then, which was horribly low in that market. Let's say they should have been 700, 650, 700. but again, the units weren't rehabbed, so that take it with a grain of salt. The units were in horrible condition, so maybe you couldn't have got that for that condition of unit. But average rents now, our rents now are $825 we're getting, which might be still on the touch low side. But they're all 1-bedroom units. I think average rents now are like I'll say 740. But yeah, 490 is where they were at. And it was a nightmare. 16 months later, though, we had turned the property around. We refinanced it, and we got it appraised. The appraiser said that the building was only worth $900,000. And I said that is wrong. And I looked at the appraisal. This is another great problem we went through. It was right during COVID, so he gave us a low appraisal. All the comps he used were properties that my old boss had purchased. So my old boss had purchased these extremely distressed properties and renovated them just like we did. Well, they're comping those distressed properties against our updated rehab property. So my boss gave me all his financials. I sent it to the appraiser. I also said, look, I looked up city data, right? For one of the comps. One of the comps was in Wayne, Michigan, and ours is in Trenton, Michigan. And I said, if 200 is the average crime index, the lower the better, right? 200, let's say, is average in the United States. I'm guessing it might be lower, but Wayne's was like 400 crime index. Trenton's is 80. I said, you're comparing these two things, and you're comparing a lot of crime to very, very little. These are two different cities you're comparing. So I hit him with all that, and thank goodness the guy said, you know what, you got a point. He reevaluated it. He gave us an appraisal at $1,030,000, which still was light. Should have been probably a 1.1, but we got a check for, we got a loan for $800,000, and that gave us a check for $300,000 16 months later. So we were able to now do some more updates, and then we were able to purchase apartment number 2, which I also found off market.
So
more common.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I was going to say this is a more common problem than you would think. Appraisals on commercial properties, they do come in low and off frequently. I have a lot of friends who've had this issue. I've personally just finished going through this issue. Well, not finished. I'm waiting for the new updated numbers to come in, but they're 100% raising the value of the property because we went back to them and said, hey, these comps are off. Like, you didn't even include the right price on this one. Your cap rate is a little questionable that you're using to determine value. So going through those steps and not just taking the appraisal at face value, super valuable. And I know that Patrick, I've brainstormed with him before on this issue before. And my problem was I wasn't proactive enough up front. So Patrick, he's super involved with the process. He'll, provide some comps, and he'll meet the appraiser at the property and let them know like the updates that have been specifically done, and just to put everything in the context. So, just for everybody who's listening, when you start to get into the commercial side of things, it's okay to be told something by a professional like an appraiser. And it's also okay to question it if you have a reason to do that and offer some value to help yourself, because you just made an extra $130,000 on that you otherwise wouldn't have had. So just a couple hours of work, really paid off.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I do too. I do the same thing. I meet the appraiser there. I'll talk about all the upgrades, what we've done, what we're seeing in other buildings. I'll tell them where the comps are. What this is why we're doing this way, because this building down here does it. And this is what they get for rent. It's always nice. And they, but always be respectful, and I was, when I challenged that appraisal, I went through our commercial mortgage broker. He facilitated it between the two, but I was very respectful, and I did not say you're wrong I just said, I think there might be a misunderstanding here, because that appraisal appraiser could have said no, and that would have been the end of it.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, and especially when you're doing a refinance like that, because you have a balloon payment you need to pay off. You need to get, you got it for 620. I'm sure you put a decent amount of money in there, so you've got to repay yourself. And it really, And with those other buildings that were getting bought up distressed, I'm sure they had higher than what you were expecting cap rates as well. For everybody out there, that needs to understand, with the cap rates, it goes off of net operating income and the average trading cap rate. And the lower the cap rate, the better. So the difference between a 7 and a 9 on a building like yours is a couple $100,000. So, like James just said, you really have to have your stuff in order, just in case something like that happens, because you could be screwed, or you could be sitting, you could have lost 150 grand and not been able to get in to this next building. So what was the next one?
So the next one, I had quit that. Like I said, I managed those 800 units in Southeast Michigan and Northern Ohio. And I had told my mentor, like, hey, I'm going to do this two years. Ended up being like a year and a half. And I'm like, hey, I got to quit. I don't have time. I gave him a month notice. And I still needed to supplement my income though. So I became a realtor. I had my license, and I'm like, well, I'll just do that. That makes sense. Right. And so I started doing that, and I had a client, and I'm showing her homes, and the market now is just obviously leading up to where it's at now, just getting crazy and crazy. And she's like, you know what? I'm renting. I think I'm just going to stay where I'm renting. And I'm like, you know what? Why don't you? And she goes, I'll just talk to my landlord and see if I can buy that house. I said, I think it'd be a great idea. Cause I want to do what's best for my clients. Right. I always do. And I said, that's great. And she goes, would you facilitate that with my landlord? Would you talk to him on my behalf? I said, yeah, that's fine. And she goes, he also owns apartment buildings. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. We had another, we had maybe 100 grand earmarked for another purchase in the bank. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I call him, and he's like, first of all, I'm not dealing with a renter with a realtor. And I said, that's fine. I'll just back off. You two can do the deal. I just want whatever's best for both of you. I'll just step out of the way. But she also said, you own apartment buildings. He goes, yeah, I got an 11 unit I'm looking to sell. I said, great. Can I go look at it tonight? And he's like, yeah. My wife and I went and looked at it. And I think it was like the next day we had a purchase agreement in his hand. And he's like, this is moving pretty quick. And we're like, well, we're ready to buy. We got the money, and we had to. There was another group that wanted to purchase it as well. They had bought one of his other buildings. We're in the process of buying it. And I had to sweet talk him with everything I had to get him to, really accept our offer. And, I told him, I'm like, look, here's, our commercial mortgage broker is here's our pre-approval. Here's my bank account. Here's the money in our bank account. These other people, you sure they're even going to close on this one? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, so now you're going to give them 2? Like, we can do this. Let's do this. And finally, the price was going up because they were bidding. And I said, listen, I can't do this anymore because you had me bidding against someone that's probably not even qualified. So I'm bidding against myself. That's really what you're doing when you're coming to me. You're saying, well, they said they'd give me this much. Well, I'm bidding against myself because they are probably not in a position to buy 2 properties at once. So it worked out, and we ended up buying that one. That one was, I'll say 430,000. It's somewhere in that range. I don't really even remember. We got a bank loan on that one. Average rents were low there as well, maybe 590, 600, something like that. And I think they're probably maybe 550. They were low. I don't remember all the numbers. And now maybe they're at, again, 750, somewhere in there.
That's really not bad. I mean, that one's 43,000 a unit. So actually a little less than that, like 37,000 a unit. The other one was like 32, and you're putting some money in, but I'm sure you're not investing double. So, I mean, you're almost getting like 1.5%, rents
Yeah.
on the money that you have in. So, I mean, that's huge. And a lot of the listeners that we have out there are just trying to find the 1% rule, on duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes. And it's really hard right now because they're tied to the single family market. When you start getting into these apartment buildings, and especially the ones that you want to buy, the only ones that people are selling are the ones with problem tenants, problem maintenance. Like, why is someone going to sell you a
Those are
cash
the ones we
cow?
buy. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So you got to expect the headaches,
Yeah.
but with those headaches, if you do all the right things, it will pay off, down the road. I mean, we bought a building last year, a 10 unit for $850,000. I'm in Maryland.
Okay.
From a woman who, it was her last building. All the tenants were paying almost, let's say, 50% less of market rents, like crazy. And, I think when we bought it, it was bringing in 7,000 a month, and we're just finishing the last unit and it's bringing in 14,000 a month.
Nice.
On a 10 unit, and this is like a 7 cap. So it's the power of knowing your market, and being able to go out there and, make those things happen. So I really love it. We've broken down some numbers, we've talking about cash flow. Like, what are these 41 units, bringing Grant and his wife every month? 41 units. It sounds like you've got maybe like $3 million ish dollars, $2.5 million worth of real estate, right?
Yep.
Like, what is that bringing in every month?
So that, I can talk about that. I'll let you know that we had some problems, like you said, with that 11 units, some major problems. And but the cash flow, and we also had some major problems with the 8 unit we bought too. I can tell you about that as well. But cash flow, it's all over the map. The problem being is we had to rehab out of cash flow. Like I said, we didn't have a lot of money. So this is a problem you're going to get into when you don't have money. You got to get it from wherever you can. So we have a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit on our personal house, 50 grand, right? That we can deploy when we need to, and then put it back when we're done with it. You got to have money. We have people that'll lend us hard money. 50 grand here and there if we need it. We've done that on every single deal, 50 grand, and then just paid them back. So really, we've been doing this 7 years. We didn't start really. I think we were taking $3,000 a month in cash flow off all those units for the last 3 years, maybe, or 2 years. So not much, because we're constantly, you'd get
paying back all the loans.
Yeah, you'd get a great month. I'll tell you what happened just yesterday. We're 100% occupied, right? Friday, Saturday morning, we wake up and we have a domestic violence issue. Second one, we have to ask the tenant to leave. The rest of the tenants are scared for their life. So we say, you got to go. So there's a vacancy. Okay. Then next thing we know, another, and these are inherited tenants. We didn't put these people in place. They came with the building. Another inherited tenant said, well, I'm going to move and I'm not going to pay you because I can't afford it. So there's 2 vacancies. So that would always happen. And everything we owned was garbage, just about, needed to be rehabbed. Nobody did anything, these past owners. So we're constantly rehabbing. I mean, we're doing 2 a month, and at, let's say, $7,000 to $10,000 a rehab. So your cash flow goes like that. So that's why we couldn't take a lot out of it. This year we've had some things change, and we're now, again, it's all over the map, but I think we took maybe 8,000 last month in cash flow. We've taken, it just depends how the building performed, what we had to do, any kind of maintenance. And, we've been everywhere from down to 4,300 up to maybe 13,000 a month. So
I kind of wanted to preface that just because, to everyone out there that's not in the space, when someone says, wow, Grant's got 41 units, you must be a millionaire, and just raking in the dough, man, right? Like you're a net worth millionaire.
Yeah.
But what's that translate to cash every month? And
Correct.
all these landlord hate groups out there and all that,
Yeah.
thinking that we're all just sitting back chilling,
Yeah.
driving our Corvettes and stuff. It's like, hey, it's been 7 years, and sometimes we're able to maybe bring in $3,000 a month, because you've got to borrow money from here and borrow money from there. And I like how you touched on that, because that's so important. Like you've got to be creative, and you've got to build relationships to be able to get those funds, because most people do not have 100, 200, 400 grand just lying around to be able to go put 20, 25% down, and then 100 plus grand into renovating all the units and having 10 vacancies, so you can redo them all at once. Like, and plus you want to be a good person and not put all these people out on the street. Like, so there's all these different dynamics that go into it. The thing is that, in the long run, it's going to pay off. All these units will be turned. They'll all be up to market rent. And then you'll probably acquire a couple more buildings by then. And then you take in 3 to 5 will all of a sudden turn into 25.
And what we do too, when we acquire a building and we tell people, rents are going up or whatever, we tell people, like, look, no one's ever repaired anything here, right? No, he doesn't do anything. It's garbage, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, that's going to change. But the problem is this building does not make money. Okay. It needs to produce income. That's why nobody repairs anything. And the tenants understand that. They might not be happy, but they understand that. That's why there's no repairs being made. It needs to bring in income. That's why we have to raise the rents. And I tell them, we had a repair at that 11 unit. I can go into that. It was, we ended up spending like $30,000 on plumbing. And I tell them that, you see what happened right there? Do you see what that was? $7,000. This one right here, this was $15,000. And I tell the tenants that, and we're very upfront with what the carpet costs in the common areas, what it costs for the parking lot. And they're like, holy shit. And we're like, yeah, that's why we have to increase the rents, because no one ever took care of this. And I want you to bring people here and be proud of where you live. And that's why we're raising rents. You might not have to like it, but that's the thing. I want you to be proud. I want people to come here and you to say, this is my home. Right now, I'm not proud of it. And you're probably not either. And we have that conversation.
Yeah, I've had clients of mine on the property management side. I manage some single family rentals. And, when it comes to the turnover, sometimes they're a little cost conscious, we'll put it in those turnover efforts, and they want to, cut some corners, save some dollars today. But I think a lot of times what they don't realize is that the more you put into it up front, the better tenant you're going to get. And even when you get a good tenant or just a decent tenant in there, the better they're going to treat the property, because it's starting off at a better condition, higher quality. And they're just going to respect their own living space more when you put the new fresh paint in there and the flooring, and it's clean, and nothing's chipping on the outside, and everything's just nice and tidy, and everything's square. They're just going to respect the space a lot more.
Yeah, and we do exactly, just like you said, right? We do exactly that. Like, if you can touch it, we're going to fix it. We're going to make it tenant proof. Like, we'll cut out galvanized drains for one thing right off the bat. Because those are all clogged, right? So we'll cut the drywall, cut it back to the stack as close as we can get it, put a Fernco on there, a rubber boot, and PVC it. We'll replace shutoffs. So we got our guys coming in, checking shutoffs. We'll replace shutoffs for the toilet, the bathroom sink, kitchen sink, the tub. We do that. Anything we can do, because a lot of times those aren't going to get replaced. But our work orders are so minimal right now at 41 units, because that's what we do. We come in and we replace all this stuff, brand new appliances. We spend a lot of money in the beginning, but our headaches are very minimal after the fact when we put a new tenant in place.
Well, I was literally just going to say that the more money you put in up front, it's just a coefficient for reduction in future headaches.
Yes.
And also more cash flow and a better property to refinance more money out of in the future. So 100%.
Yeah. My my dad has a saying that I've taken to heart, and it's everybody always has the time and the money to do it right the second time. Like, why don't you just do it right the first time? And it's always going to cost more the second time because it'll be an emergency. You were in there fixing up the unit, change those shutoffs. You know what I mean? Check those drains. Like, hey, the hot water heaters from 98. Like, let's just go ahead and take that out now while it's easy. They're only $500. Like those little things that are going to cost an extra 500 here or whatever, down the road, you got a tenant in there, hot water heater. Like that's a big problem. They don't have hot water. They can't get ready for work. Their kids can't shower. Like all these things start becoming a big problem. Cutting out drywall, cutting out the tubs, because there's a leak behind that's going into someone else's unit. Now you've got to put them in a hotel potentially. All of this stuff that people being I love James's word, cost. What'd you say?
Cost conscious.
Cost conscious in the beginning. Like, look, you're gonna have to spend the money at some point. Yeah, they're cheap. Everyone's always got the money to do it right the second time. So just do it right the first time. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing as a landlord. Is you're taking pride in your business, and it sounds like you self-manage, like you're the face to your tenants. A lot of people preach out there, hey, get a property management company, you don't want people knowing it's you, and all of that. Don't build relationships with your tenants. I'd love for you to break that down a little bit for us, because I think that's a really important piece of this whole thing to make your business successful.
Yeah. And we, like I said, my wife does 99% of the property management. I'll get involved like more if there's like, higher level construction things or, but she handles everything. I mean, she does a great job, but she knows all the tenants. I don't anymore. So I'm not in there like she is, but she knows them all. And, on one hand, like we have one tenant that decides, we're not going to pay your rent anymore and we hate you. Right. And on the other hand, you have a tenant saying, this is the best experience I ever had. I love you guys. I want to renew my lease. Like, what's the difference? Right. Because you're treating them all the same. We treat everyone the same and they all have to follow the same rules. I just think this is fascinating. I was thinking about this the other day. One's experience is horrible. One's is fantastic. They're both treated the same and they have to follow the same rules. What's the difference, right? Well, one is an inherited tenant that we didn't put in place. And the one we did and screened and makes 3 times the rent is having a fantastic experience with us. So I got off on a tangent there, but I think that's interesting. But one of the things I try to do is everyone's told me like, yeah, you don't want to be, don't tell everybody you own it and everything. And we did that for a while. And my wife was always like, that's bullshit. Why? You know what? Who cares? I'm always trying to act, oh yeah, I'm the manager. So we kind of let that go. And then with my social media, it's like, you know what? Fuck it. It is what it is. Right. So yeah, we own it. And I try and do that. And then I think too, like, how can I help people? Because when we started and we bought this building, there's a million websites out there to learn how to buy an apartment building, podcasts and things like that, right? Bigger Pockets is where I started and I'm forever grateful for that. But what happens after you buy one? That's where I thought, you know what, that's where I can add value to people, because we're sitting there for months going, do we put glue down or click plank? What color are the walls? Now, this is what we're going to do in all our units. What color paint should we use? What about common area? Should we use common area carpeting, common area LVP? All these things that we had no idea and we're trying to search, and there really was nothing out there to tell that owner, like, this is what you do after you buy an apartment building. Because I wanted to copy again. That's what I did. That's how I grew. I just found somebody and I copied. Oh, this is what you do? Fuck it. We'll just copy you. And it was easy. And then when we got in this space, I'm like, nobody's really sharing that stuff. Yeah, they'll show videos, but guess what? I show a video and I tell you, Sherwin-Williams does our flooring. They're one of the largest flooring distributors in the United States. They do all our flooring in our apartments. That's nationwide. Everybody can benefit from that. So I'm like, why don't I get that out there and just tell people? So that's something I do.
But no, I think what's important is also, with your experiences and everything that you've been through, you're sharing a lot of some of the setbacks that you've experienced along the way too. I know, when you go on, Bigger Pockets and listen to some of their podcasts, not that the content's not informative and helpful, 100% is. A lot of it's puppies and unicorns and the highlights and the positives and all the great things that can happen. But we all know the fundamentals of real estate investing is tenants, termites, toilets, and all the headaches that come with all those things. So, you're putting that stuff out there, especially on this episode. There's things to be cautious of and be wary of, and there's strategies for how to do things right up front, even though they're going to be a headache to get through. So that's super valuable.
Yeah. And, one of the biggest things that we still joke about, Monique and I, not really joke, but we'd listen to these podcasts and people are like $3,000 to $4,000 for a rehab. And we're like, okay, $3,000 to $4,000. We didn't know any better. Right. And then we bought an apartment building and went, whoa, $3,000 to $4,000. We're spending $6,000 and not even redoing cabinets. We're painting cabinets. Like, holy shit. Cause the plumbing is always bad. I'm like, that's bad information. When I first started, I'm like, we're going to put a dishwasher in every unit. We're going to put washers and dryers in units. Right. And then we bought it and we're like, but that doesn't make sense for every building. Right. It's like, and it's not cost. We can't do that. So that's kind of what we like to do.
The key thing you just said there is it doesn't make sense for every building, every market. It really doesn't. Like, hey, I'm painting cabinets in mine and I could put new cabinets in my units. But am I really going to get that much more rent by spending, $1,500 on cabinets for an apartment when majority of the ones that you're going to get at Home Depot now are junk and aren't going to last 20 years like the ones I would be ripping out.
Yes.
But LVP, it costs $1.50 to $2 a square foot to get it installed with shoe. And if you're going to buy decent stuff, that's $2 to $3 plus. So your 700 square foot apartment, boom, you're already $2,800 in just for doing the floors. Then you're going to pay a painter, $1,000 to $1,500 because you want all the trim to be white. You want the ceilings to be white. You want the walls to be a different color. You want them to clean up after themselves. And then, you don't want junk paint. So now you're spending $250, $300 on a 5-gallon bucket of paint.
Yep.
It takes 2 or 3 of those for an apartment. So just paint and floors, you're already $4,000 or $5,000 in to an apartment. And you haven't even done any of the major stuff like AC, hot water heater, washers and dryers, light fixtures, electrical.
Yep.
I know for me, a lot of my units, they still had where the switch would go to an outlet. Well, to me, nobody does that anymore. No one has lamps. Like now I have to put ceiling fans or lights in the center of all the rooms. Like, so now I'm paying an electrician $555. There's another, $1,000, $2,000. So I love that you're putting that information out there. I try to put that information out there too, because you're right. Everyone caters to single family 2 to 4 units, and then it's apartment syndication, and you don't need any experience for that. So no one's in the middle telling people, how to get, those 8 to 20 unit apartment buildings and the struggles that you're going to go through. So
yeah. And that's what I do. I'll put a video and I'll put exactly the cost, $600 to reglaze the tub and surround. $1,000 in labor. We spent $2,000 in material, including appliances. We spent, I just go over and over everything and break it down and go, here's what it was, $10,000 for a 2-bedroom, like flooring was $2,800. Yeah. It's crazy, but yeah, people need to know that and see that getting into it and not be shocked. On that 11 unit that I want to talk to you guys about that for a minute too, that we had a major plumbing repair when we bought that. And I share this with people too. Like, that's the importance of having a HELOC or having some money set aside just in case you need it. We had everything drained. We had all the drains scoped, camera and everything. And the owners told us, he's like, I'll be honest, this one unit in the basement will back up occasionally, but we just snake it and it goes away. And we're like, okay, well, no big deal. So the plumber we were using had us do these different things, and we spent maybe 10 grand with him. And we're like, okay, should be fine. Well, then it would back up every other day. So whatever we did caused a major problem. We ended up, I mean, my wife, we'd have people come out, it would back up, right? And in the unit, and we'd have someone come out and put a camera down, and it was gone. And the plumber's like, I can't fix what I can't find. So we had 2 more guys come out, camera, couldn't find it. So we're praying. I mean, we literally prayed to God and said, we don't care what it costs. Please send us somebody that can find this. I got a call on my birthday. We're celebrating my birthday downtown Detroit at a nice hotel. And my place backed up again. It's 11 at night. It's like, oh, it's just sickening. And we ended up finding a plumber. What happened was, this is a good tip too. These cameras, when you camera a drain, there's bellies in the drain, right? So the camera, it's cast iron. It's old, 1970s. So the drains were cast iron. The camera would go into the belly, it'd go into the dirty water and come out. And they'd say, listen, it's fine. It's dirty water. I can't see. Bellies are okay. The water's still flowing. The water will sit in there, but generally the water flows through it. So you're fine. Well, the plumber we found said, let's run all the water in the whole building. We ran all the water on that drain line, right? And what that did was flush all that dirty water out of the bellies. He put his camera in. He's like, there it is right there, man. Bottom of the pipe fell out. So the toilet paper would come in. It's like a zipper. It'd come in, get snagged on it, and it would sit there. And by the time we got there, poof, it would let go and it was gone. So $15,000 later, we had to rip a kitchen out. It was in the next unit. It would, rip all the kitchen out. 25 feet of PVC we had to cut out, replace 25, put PVC in, solved the problem, but 15 grand. And then he descaled and power jetted all the lines for us. So yeah, like 30 grand, man.
Plus the 10 grand before that, right?
Yeah, 30 total. There was another 5 grand. He had to put a clean out outside. And so yeah, $30,000 later for this plumbing repair. It was a nightmare.
And hey, you got the line scope. You did everything that you were supposed to do beforehand. So that is the importance right there of saving for CapEx and maintenance, because you're putting that $500, $1,000 a month away on all your properties, depending on how big they are, and stuff like that happens. And like you said, that's the importance of having a HELOC. Now you have to pay yourself back, but luckily you had it. And that's what happens is you're buying properties from landlords who didn't have those reserves, who weren't thinking about that. They don't have the 30 grand to go and do that. So they'll just spend the 200 or 300 to send somebody out there to unclog it all the time. And these are the problems that you run into.
And that's what he'd do. He'd snake it every month. He'd snake it. But now that it's good to know that when someone tells you like, hey, I have to snake this drain once a month, you need to know that's not normal. There's a problem there. So that's a good tip. Like, you need to realize that it could be roots, right? It just needs to be augered out and the tree roots out of there, but more than likely there's a problem. So pay attention.
So I know you got that HELOC and that's what you're using, maybe to handle some expenses that come up, but how do you kind of conceptualize what should be available for reserves? Do you have a per unit amount that you should have access to, whether in, easy credit or cash, or is there some other metric that you kind of use to know how much you should have available for reserves?
Yeah, I'd love to give you a real professional answer, but I'll tell you the truth, dude. We were squeaking into these things, and it's like, whatever we can, we'll get into the deal and we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we weren't like, okay, we can't do this deal unless we have so much in reserve. We're just like, okay, let's take 50 from here because we know this, and need to be done. And we'll take that money and, we'll try and do that. Like, okay, we got to do the roof here. We got to do this. We'll take 50 grand from them. We have the money in the HELOC if we need it. We don't want to touch it, but And then we have this money from whatever left over. And then usually it all goes to shit. But, you know, for us, we didn't have a lot of money. So like that first 20 unit, we just got in the deal. And then that's why we just rehabbed out of cash flow.
Right.
So going forward, I would suggest people get like a construction loan maybe, or something to help them out to get some of these costs, these upfront costs, you know, in the loan. So they don't have to do it the way we did. We just didn't know any better.
I know the feeling that with everything I've ever bought, you know, starting out, it's like you're running on fumes at the beginning, and you're just praying that the cash flow comes in. A, it comes in, and B, it can build up a little bit to cover something that might happen.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a common thing.
Yeah. People would ask me like, well, what was your criteria? My criteria was it's available and we can buy it. That's it, dude. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't care. If we can buy it, we'll buy it. That was it. It's got to be for sale and we got to be able to buy it.
I completely agree. And like, so we just have all of the money going into one checking account. And then I save, me personally, I do 5% for maintenance, 5% for vacancy, 5% for CapEx. So 15% of on the gross of everything that comes in, we put that in a savings account. And if something comes up from a property over here, I'm pulling out of that that bundle. It's not just that property. It's out of all of them, you know, until we get enough, you know, and like the cash flow and the cash flow is sitting in another savings account because we're just reinvesting. Like we're not really taking in anything out of our business either. So it's like just building up this big nest egg to one, be able to purchase more properties, but for two, be able to pay when something happens, you know, like and we know down the road, like one day it's all going to pay off when everything's nice and shiny and new and fixed, you know? So,
and that my wife will do that too. We have two, we have our operating account and our savings account. So she'll take, property taxes, insurance, and the water bill. And she'll take so much per month, right? And put that into savings. And then we also take $250 a unit per month. So now we have a lot of funds sitting. So we're really good. But to get started, you just kind of got to squeak into it. But you know, $250 per unit. And I forget what else we do. We just kind of look at what's coming in and go, okay, there's extra there. Okay, we could take 5,000 this month out of this one single building. Let's take 4,000 and we'll throw an extra 1,000 on top of our reserves into the reserve fund, right? So now we really want to get that up to certain numbers. We keep 3 months of operating in the operating account, 3 months of expenses. So yeah, we're a little more, we're better capitalized now. So yeah, I you know, but in the beginning, yeah, it was a little tough.
I love that part. I love that part so much. It's like, hey, you're just squeaking by the seat of your pants. Like you said, just it's available. I can buy it. Let's just figure it out. And then, hey, a year or two later, you know, now the money is starting to flow in. Like, all right, let's build up those reserves that everybody says you need to have. Let's get 3 months of operating expenses. If everyone in the building decides, you know, to not pay or something, so we're covered. And then you have that over your whole portfolio. And then that's the smart investor that you need to be.
Yeah.
But off the get, man, you just got to get started and just, you know, ring that bell. Just
well,
ding, ding, ding.
It's all about deciding, committing, taking action. I like to say sometimes, you know, you don't want to forsake being proactive and having a clear mind of what you're doing. But sometimes, you know, I like to say it can be tomorrow's problem. You know, you don't have to have everything figured out right ahead when you're getting started. You don't have to have all the cash available. You can find sources of income to take care of some of those things. So.
Exactly. Yeah. We knew we had good properties. They're right in our city, right in our backyard. We come home for lunch if we're there working on something like it. So like, we know this area, like the third building we bought, It was a 1031 exchange. I can go into that. We sold 3 single family homes. We just closed on it last year, May 4th last year. We sold 3 single family homes and we did a 1031 exchange. So you have 45 days to identify the property you're going to buy and 180 days to close on it. And if you don't identify in 45 days, you get your money back, which is fine. But then you have to pay, we would have had to pay $70,000 in taxes, capital gains taxes. But if you identify a property and you do not close on it, they'll hold your money for the 180 days. So you don't want to just throw properties out there. Well, this was day 43 and this 8-unit hit the market and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know this property. I've cold called it. I've tried to buy it in the past. I know it's garbage. It needs everything. I already know because it's in this area and these people don't, nobody really fixes anything. It's 1960s. So everything needs to be done, but I knew the roof was good. The windows looked decent. So we got some things to work with. 4 hours later, this is, I called the realtor. I was a realtor at the time. And I told him who I was and he goes, oh, you know what? I know who you are. One of your realtors in your office talks about you all the time. You're an investor. You own apartment buildings. I've seen your content online. So yeah, I know you do what you say. And that was huge for me. That really helped me. And I said, it was $625 for 8 units. And I said, listen, I'll write you a purchase agreement right now. And he said, the owner wants $640. I said, you got it advertised for $625. It's in the MLS for $625. He's like, I know, but he just said right now, I want $640. And I said, it's not going to appraise. It's not going to appraise for $625. He goes, I know, but that's what he wants. And I knew I was on day 43, right? My wife and and I'm like, I gotta lock this up. So I said, listen, $18,000 would have been my commission. I said, I'll give that 18 grand to the owner, not to you, but to the owner. Tell him that he can keep that. And that got it locked up. We got that check, or we signed it. We closed on it. And that was probably for a year, it was like a year of terror. It was terrible. We had a vandalism. One of the tenants was vandalizing everything. So, I mean, imagine spending $625,000 and every day you go there and you're proud of it to improve it. There's spray paint, there's words, kill, this and that. And it was so defeating every single time. So we had to deal with a vandal. We had to deal with a tenant that just would not pay rent. That's the first time we had to really go almost to full eviction. We've never gone in 7 years to full eviction. It was terrible. We had to deal with all kinds of different stuff. I don't even want to get into all of it, but these people had lived there for 20 years. And one of the gentlemen told me, I've seen 6 property managers come and I'll see you come and go too. And I said, okay, sounds good. You got to go.
Oh my goodness. Well, on that note, I got to ask on that note, I got to ask, like, so why are you doing this? Like what's the reason behind putting yourself, through all these headaches and all of this stuff,
Great question.
It sounds like the last 3 years you've just been banging your head against the wall. So tell us why, man.
So yeah, here's why, right? Because we wanted a different life. So here's the other thing on the flip side of that. My wife and I don't have jobs. These are our full-time jobs. We both quit our W-2s. We have freedom to go do things. And now we have financial freedom where we can vacation and do some different things. But what we realized and what happened in January, I'm in GoBundance and I was at an event in January this year. And I'm telling one of the guys there, I'm like, yeah, from now on, we're going to syndicate. Well, I said, we're going to syndicate 100 units and more going forward. And we're also going to buy a 16-unit building ourselves. My wife and I own those 41 units, no partners ourselves. I said, we're going to buy a 16-unit ourselves. And he goes, let me ask you this. At 16 unit, just like you said, he's like, those other units were beating your ass, right? For how many years? I said, yeah. Is the 16 unit going to be the same? I said, yeah. He says, it's going to be a lot of work. I said, yeah, a lot of work, a lot of money. 2 years it'll take us to get all the old tenants out, get new tenants in. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of work. He goes, why are you doing that? Why don't you just syndicate? If you're going to syndicate 100 units, go all in and do that. And I called my
Mhm.
wife that night and I go, forget the 16 unit. Let's just syndicate these going forward. And she goes, thank you. You're right. Let's do it. So now our goal is, and that was January. 2 months later, we were under contract for a 98 unit in Pell City, Alabama. It's Birmingham, basically. And we just closed on it. So it's like, I was intentional with that. Just like we were intentional with no more single families. We're going into apartments from now on. And we were intentional. We told everybody this is what we're doing. And we ended up closing on that. And now the goal is to get ourselves out of all of this, managing all this ourselves. We're going to either hire someone or give it to a property manager at some point, which will cut our cash flow. So that's kind of, we're trying to figure that out. And we're going to move into the syndication space full time. And, our goal is I want to work with a cell phone and a laptop from anywhere in the world. So I can't be married to these 41 units. So we're going to figure that out. But now again, it's got our minds shifting again. And we're going, okay, now we need to change again, because what we're doing, everything we did got us here, right? Now we need to change. And because now we got to get to 1,000 units, and everything we did in the past isn't going to get us to 1,000 units. So now we're shifting and we're moving forward towards that goal.
I mean, that's what financial independence is all about, living life on your terms, and you're creating that business where you're going to have the opportunity to work from your cell phone, laptop, anywhere in the world you want to. And syndicating really does offer that opportunity, because you're going to be able to outsource a lot of the work and components that go into that. And especially when you remove yourself from that property management aspect of your current portfolio, like, it's going to be awesome situation. So tell us a little bit about your obstacles that you have in the near term between, now where you are with self-managing units to getting to that syndication lifestyle business that you're going to start growing into.
Well, we're already there with that, with the syndication piece. But the problem now is getting ourselves out of the 41 units. So what we're looking at, here's some things we're looking at doing. We're going to hire a VA, we're thinking, right? For the property management side. I just hired one for my content creation, and that's another whole nother ball game. But for the property management side, we're going to hire a VA. And this, again, we're thinking this through, to answer phones, to deal with our contractors, and handle all of that workload. And my wife would oversee the VA. And then we're also going to hire a local realtor, or someone maybe that's retired and only needs like maybe 15 out. We don't need a lot of work, but we need somebody to go there, maybe walk around the building, pick up some trash, adjust the floor mats, let somebody in if they get locked out. It's all local. Keep an eye on, hey, the weeds, we need to pick the weeds. We need more mulch. Let's get some mulch in this year and do some things, or this is getting out of control, or the gutter's loose. Like we need somebody there, because we're moving. We're planning on moving. Like we're thinking we're going to move to Florida. So we're like, we need to put somebody in place that can handle all that. So we have a maintenance guy, and we're splitting time, because obviously 41 units, it's $30 an hour. We pay him, and he does a really good job, but we can't afford that full time. So what we do is, when we don't have work, we have another guy local in this area that picks him up, and he uses him. And then when we need our work again, like these 2 rehabs, he's going to come back to us for the month of July, and he's going to do our rehabs. Then he'll go back to the other guy. So we're figuring this out as we go. And that's the beautiful thing of networking. I didn't think about that, but my buddy called me and he's like, hey bro, we both got this problem. We need a maintenance guy. Why don't we split it? And I'm like, you know what? That's a great idea. So networking though, that's how I meet these people at events and things like that, you're going to meet people that have similar problems, and you can go ahead and solve them. But that's our goal moving forward. And then possibly we might sell those 41 at some point and buy something bigger and newer ourselves down south.
Man, I absolutely love it. You have been bringing so much great energy, so much great insight into, your mind, your business, your goals, like putting your intentions out there and just being committed. Like everything it says on the hat right here, like you've been speaking to me, and I'm sure all the listeners out there have gotten a ton of value. And this kind of transitions us into our last segment of the podcast that we call the Big Four. James, take it away.
So, Grant, tell us something that you do on a consistent basis that kind of feels like a financial independence hack, something that just makes, your pursuit of getting to financial independence that much easier.
I'll say this, and it might not make a lot of sense, but what I do is content creation. So it might not make a lot of sense. How's that going to get me there? Because I'm not there yet, right? But I know one thing, I'm documenting what I'm doing. I know another thing, where I want to be in life. It's probably going to be I'm going to need more things than just apartment buildings. I'm going to need businesses and other avenues of income. So I create content, I put that out there, and I think that's going to lead to the level of financial independence I'm looking for eventually. And, I know in 5 years, I'm going to look back and go, gosh, I'm so glad I did this, than opposed to in 5 years going, why did I make all those stupid videos? You know what I mean? So I can't put my finger on it yet, but I'm getting closer to developing a plan and figuring out, like, where am I going to be with this content creation in 5 years? So that's something I do. I encourage everybody to do it, man. You guys do cool stuff every day. So everybody does, you know what I mean? So just throw some stuff out there.
Yeah, I think that's huge in just putting yourself out there, because, even if you don't know what you're doing, it is networking. I think the content creation side is networking. I mean, that's how I found you. A lot of people reach out to us, that's how they find us. That's how we find great guests for the podcast. So many people have reached out to me. I've grabbed a beer, I've grabbed lunch. My wife and I have grabbed dinner with other couples that are going through the same thing. So I think what you're saying is, like, you just got to put yourself out there. And there's so many times in this last hour and a half almost that you've talked about putting yourself out there, and it helped you get to where you are today. And you just need to put yourself out there even more to get to your next levels. So I think that's a great little nugget. And hopefully I helped kind of like summarize that in a little bow for you. Yeah. But all right, the next thing that we always like to ask our guest is resources. So is there any particular book, we know Bigger Pockets podcast, any other podcast, book, or any particular kind of influencers or people that our listeners, can benefit from going and checking out, either reading, subscribing, or going and, finding out that person. So what do you got for the listeners out there? I
will give my number one book recommendation, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like, if you're looking to be a real estate investor, or just a better human being, it's a phenomenal book. It teaches you how to listen to people, how to interact with people. I was fortunate enough to take the class. It's like a 12-week course. It's phenomenal. That book is great. And it just really helps you become a better communicator.
I know Warren Buffett, attributes a lot of his success to that book, and he took Dale Carnegie's course as well. And if anybody hasn't learned this yet, real estate is a relationship-based business. You can't just be some nerd in the corner of your basement crunching numbers, buying these buildings, because there's a lot of interpersonal relations, whether it's your tenants or people on your team, from your attorneys to your property managers to your agents. So knowing how to manage those relationships is going to get you to the next level, especially when you're jumping up to the syndication business, which you're growing and developing into. So, jumping off from there, paint the future picture that Grant Warrington has 5 years in the future. Describe to us, your personal life. Are you on the beach in Florida in your mansion? Like, are you scaling your syndication business? How many units do you have? Give us that 5-year picture of your personal life and your business.
Sure. Yeah. I would say, and it's always changing. Everything's always changing for us, but I would say, yeah, we're in a warm climate. We're in Michigan and we're just sick of the winter. So we're in a warm climate. Let's say it's Florida, right? Is it a mansion? No. My wife and I talk, like, would we like to live in a 10,000 square foot home? I'm like, no, what would we do? It's just her and I, and I wouldn't be able to find her. Right. And then who's going to clean it? Like, just these little, it's just funny how you get a little older and you're like, yeah, I don't want a 10,000 foot man, 4,000 might be nice. But you know, we have a nice car. We vacation all the time. I see myself on a laptop and a phone. I see myself being a better husband, being a better human being. I see myself contributing hours and money to things I care about, things to help other people, you know, charities. And I see my wife and I really truly being happy. And those are the big things for us. Like my personal growth is big. Like I want to be happy, and I want to enjoy life and be better to not only her, but to other people. And so I don't have this grand idea, but you know, those are some important things to me.
And I think the takeaway nugget is, you know, even going back to the beginning of the conversation, when you had those 11 units and you were going to go to Starbucks and talk to your boss about, you know, what might happen with the future of your employment, like you had the optionality to choose to do more fulfilling things because you took the step forward. And that's exactly what you were describing just now is, you know, being happy, being a good husband, finding fulfilling things to do for the benefit of others. And that's really all this business is. It's like real estate is the means to get to those higher level objectives for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and you didn't say once about, you know, I'll be making $10 million a year or any of that stuff, you know, because it's more meaningful than that. The money is the tool that gets you to the meaningful things. It's not the goal. And that's huge. All right. Well, you've dropped a ton of nuggets. I'm sure everybody wants to know, how do they get in touch with you? So, you know, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it a phone call, Instagram, TikTok, email? Like let the listeners know the best way to get in touch with Grant.
Yeah, really three ways: Instagram and TikTok. Instagram and TikTok at Grant Warrington on both of those. I'm on YouTube as well, Grant Warrington. But if you're on Instagram or TikTok, you can click on my link. You could schedule a free 30-minute phone call with me. We could talk about real estate, investing in real estate, working with me, anything like that. Or you could go to warringtoncapital.com and you can get a little more information about what we do in the large apartment business.
That's great. Well, everybody out there, Grant, we thank you so much. I know you definitely brought a ton of value to James and I. So you guys know the drill. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, make sure to go follow Grant on Instagram, and also make sure to leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, Google, and all those other places. And we'll catch you next time. See you guys.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Real FI podcast, where you learn from the investors that have lived the hard lessons for you. To connect with us during your pursuit of financial independence, be sure to join our community by following us on Instagram or emailing us at info@therealfi.com. If this content made you financially, mentally, physically, or spiritually richer, please make sure to leave us a positive review on your preferred content platform. Cheers to kicking the 9 to 5.